Why do video games matter? The human condition has always been tied to dreams, not the fleeting nonsensical ones we have when we sleep, but the waking kind, the daydreams, the imagined worlds where we leap higher, run faster, love more fully, fight more bravely. If you're anything like me, your childhood was filled with them. Castles rising in your mind's eye, starships tearing across invisible skies, secret lives lived between math class and dinner. Stories were the lifeblood of those dreams. Humanity has always told stories, scratched into cave walls, whispered by firelight, inked onto parchment. Stories become myths, myths become religions, and religions become the frameworks of civilizations. They weren't just entertainment. They were how we asked, what if, and dared to live inside the answer, even for a moment. Video games sit squarely in that lineage. They are the next great step in our love affair with stories, the most interactive and personal medium we've yet invented. When you hold a controller or sit at a keyboard, you aren't just listening to a tale. You are the one who carries it forward. The fantasies of childhood don't have to remain stuck in the back of your mind. Games let you enter them, embody them, and test yourself within them, even if it's only to an extent. For most of the human condition, imagination was all we had. A child could dream of flying, but wings remained stubbornly in the realm of myth. A warrior could dream of slaying dragons, but the closest they got was carving a story into wood or painting one onto a cave wall. Our ancestors carried entire universes inside their heads, but those universes could never spill past the fragile membrane of the mind. Then, almost overnight by historical standards, video games arrived. Think of how remarkable that is. Tens of thousands of years of humanity confined to imagining alone, and suddenly, here is a machine that lets us externalize the impossible, to wrangle the daydream, to trap it in code, to give it weight and color and sound. For the first time, a fantasy could be shared, not as a metaphor, but as an experience. You don't just hear the story of the hero, you become the hero, with choices and consequences that ripple through a living world. When video games first appeared, they were little more than digital toys. Pong, the first video game ever, was 2 paddles and a dot, essentially a blip bouncing between the imaginations that filled in the rest. It was simple, almost laughably so, but from those crude beginnings, something extraordinary started to grow. Games evolved, pixels multiplied, sound sharpened, and suddenly there were plumbers leaping across impossible worlds, warriors storming castles, space marines holding the line against alien hordes. What began as abstract mechanics transformed into narratives, and what began as novelty became a medium. By the time worlds like Hyrule, Midgar, and Tamriel appeared, games weren't just about winning anymore, they were about being. Now we live in an age where games rival the best novels and films in emotional weight. A controller in your hand is a ticket to live someone else's story. The tragedy of Joel and Ellie, the bittersweet path of Commander Shepard, the triumphs and failures of V and Night City. These aren't just diversions, they're experiences that linger, that shape us, that remind us of the oldest truth in human history. That stories matter, and video games have become the sharpest tool we've ever made to carve those stories into our lives. There's something beautiful about how games began. Those early blocky graphics weren't realistic by any stretch. A square was a hero, a jagged cluster of pixels was a dragon, and our brains did the heavy lifting. We filled in the gaps. We didn't need high resolution. We supplied the resolution ourselves. And yes, we're all thinking about Lara Croft. The imagination stitched flesh onto blocky bones, turned bleeps into battle cries, made tiny sprites into epic odysseys. Then the graphics got better, worlds became more detailed, characters more expressive, and our daydreams didn't have to just sit there. The spell was still there, but it was stronger, clearer, easier to share. Suddenly, a story wasn't just hinted at anymore. It could be shown. A village burned, a comrade who died, a hero stood tall against impossible odds. And we don't have to just imagine it. We can all see it together. And now we've crossed into the stunning. Games render vistas so breathtaking they rival reality itself. Every blade of grass, every wrinkle in a face, every flicker of torchlight is brought to life with almost obsessive devotion. Yet, here's the wonder, even with all of these visual splendors, our imaginations still run wild. We still see more of what's on screen because the human mind never stopped filling in the gaps. It just has richer clay to shape form now. So let's be grateful for where we stand in history. Out of the billions of humans who've ever lived, most never had the chance to step into another world beyond the pages of a book or the images of a painting or through the fields of daydreams. But us, we live in an era where you can wake up, press a button, and find yourself in an entire universe that is built from nothing but code and grit. It is no small thing. Video gaming is one of humankind's greatest accomplishments, and we barely even acknowledge it as such. Not because it entertains us, but because it proves what imagination and technology can do when they join hands. To literally make worlds where there once were none. To sculpt adventures out of pure thought, to breathe life into pixels and code until they pulse with meaning. That is the miracle of creativity. Every bit as worthy of reverence as the great cathedrals or the timeless epics of literature. And the beauty is that it's not locked away for a chosen few. These worlds are open to anyone who picks up a controller, anyone willing to dream with their eyes open. And we will go further still, into realms that we can barely imagine, into worlds stranger and grander than any we've built yet. Who knows what we will make? Who knows what will be possible? But with that comes the question we must ask ourselves. Are we ready? When does art stop being art and start becoming life? If such a boundary even exists. If we can create realities so vivid, so meaningful that they shape our very identities, then what is the difference between the world we're born into and the ones we dream into being? And here's the most unsettling thought of all, or perhaps the most settling, depending on your own view. What if we already are art? What if our own reality is someone else's grand creation, the most intricate game ever played? How could we ever know? Video games remind us that imagination is not just a pastime, it's the engine of existence, and maybe, just maybe, we've only ever just pressed start. If you guys enjoyed this video, I would ask if you would be ever so kind. I would be extremely grateful if you would drop a like and a comment and subscribe and all that good jazz that everyone asks for. It means a lot to me, and I really want to put in a lot of work to have a lot of good discussions with you guys in the future. So with that being said, I would love to hear how gaming has touched your reality in a meaningful way down in the comments. Let me know, and I'd love to hear from you guys. And always be blessed and have a great day.